Hello everyone, it's Brenda Miller from the ABQ Sewing Studio in Strathroy, Ontario, and today we're going to talk about turning tubes. We've all made tubes before for various projects, like the little loop on the back of your blouse that fits a button, or you might have done a wedding dress with, button loops, or you might have had to do a drawstring for a hoodie or pair of sweatpants or something like that. And there are lots of different ways to create tubes, some better than others. So we're gonna do a little investigation today. We're going to look into this method where you do a little V at the bottom and stitch it together and draw it through. We're going to look at a product by Clover called Easy Loop. We're gonna try the ribbon method or the string method, whatever you prefer to call it. We've got the Easy Turn tools by Dritz makes them, but I think other companies do too. We've got a little latch hook loop turner, and we have your humble safety pin. Which of these methods will work out the best for me? Which will work out the best for you? I'd be interested to hear what you think and your experiences, so let's get on with it. So in this method, what you do is you have your tube strip cut, and you attach a ribbon or a heavier piece of yarn or thread or something to the fabric, and a little bit closer to the top, you stitch across it a few times to secure it. And then you will fold your tube in half and stitch along the side. Now, the trick here is that you do not want to catch the ribbon in your line of stitching. So you've got to use something that's a little bit narrower than what you're going to be stitching. And you join up your edges and stitch down the side. All right, once that's complete, you begin by tugging the ribbon and feeding the end, yeah, this is the tricky bit, into the opening. Once you've got that, and there is your tube. And then you can nip off that ribbon end and use it again. So there is one method for turning. You might try this method. So I'm bringing up my bobbin thread on my machine, and I'm going to pull a length of thread somewhat longer than, this is the top and bottom thread, somewhat longer than my tube, and just put it to the back of the machine. And then I'm going to take my fabric and fold it twice on an angle. And then starting from the point, I will stitch, back stitch, and a little more of that just to keep it in place. And I've got this really, really long thread here, and I'm going to place it inside of my fabric tube that I'm going to stitch along the side. Just fold that. And just getting everything organized is tricky. There. And then I'm going to stitch the sides to make the tube. Just want to make sure you don't catch those threads. They want to be in the center of that tube. I wouldn't do this for heavyweight fabrics. In fact, I had tried this with a Kona cotton weighted fabric, and I had some trouble turning it. But for lightweight stuff, this works pretty good. Okay, so here is my tube with that end we stitched. And what needs to happen now is to force this into the inside of the tube. And I've got some scissors here, I'll just use the point. And I'm just pushing that in the tube. Okay. And then you've got those two thread ends, the bobbin and the top thread at the opposite end. And then this is where you gotta finesse it a bit. So I just try and grab it with a fingernail and tug. But yeah, don't use heavier fabric for smaller tubes. This is going to be really difficult to use heavier fabric. But there's my tube, and all that used was the thread on your sewing machine, so that's nice. Here we go. This is the Dritz Quick Turn fabric tube turners, and there are 3 sizes, and it consists of a tube and some little sticks, so one is metal, that help force the fabric through the tube. So I turned the smaller one using the smaller tube, and I'll just show you how that works. Now, when you use these turning tools, you have to end stitch on one end, and that can be cut off later, but be sure to reinforce stitch that. And the way it works is you insert this straw-like purple bit into the tube, and then you use the little plunger bit here to oops, to do your best. I'll just prop it on the table here. This way. That seems better. Okay. Actually, once you've got it started, you can just pull it, and there we go. Okay, so that's, you know, a fairly narrow strip of fabric. And because it has a closed end, if you don't need a closed end, just nip it off. If you do need a closed end, perfect. Okay. Let's use this next size straw for a larger tube. Let's say this might be a drawstring. It could be a little longer. And as you can see, I can feed the tube of the straw part right inside. It doesn't have to be the length of the unit. Okay, so I'm at the stitched end. And I should use the pointy part here, maybe. There's my plunger, and I can just feed it down. Ooh. There she blows. Okay, now just pull this off. These things kind of stretch out a bit when you use fleece. Then I'll just get my plunger out the other end. And there we go. That worked pretty slick. All right, so we have our tube sewn, but what we want to do this time is use a safety pin, and we're going to actually cut a hole in our project. So you're going to, you know, there's your hole. You're going to take a safety pin. Now the safety pin has got to fit in your tube. So find one that will fit. Actually, this one's kind of big. So give me a second, I'm gonna go grab another one. Okay, smaller safety pin. And I take that end I just snipped and I'll put my safety pin through the loop. There, like that. And now it's going to go into that hole I cut, so just like that. And I will feed that little end over. Again, I'm just kind of giving it a tug with my end of my fingernail. There. So once it's started, it's pretty easy to carry on. So I'll just push that safety pin through. And this method will work with any length of tube, so that's kind of nice. The method that I show with the thread used on the machine, you know, you've got to kind of guess how much thread you're going to need, and you might be wrong. That wasn't too bad, was it? And then you nip off that end and save your safety pin for another day. The next device I want to show you is the Clover Easy Loop tool. Now, this tool kind of has two functions. It can be a kind of a bodkin idea that it's flexible, that can feed elastic, you know, through a casing. So you just kind of push it through and it comes right along with you. Or you can use it for loop turning. So there are two in the package, a wider one and a skinnier one. And they have a little kind of clip here on the one end. So when you make your tube, you have to leave yourself some thread on the end, okay? And you open up that clip slightly and you will wrap the thread around the clip a few times. Oops. There, good enough. Okay, and you got to leave yourself a little play here so you can get it in the loop. And in it goes. And then again, you are wanting to get that started feeding back. Often easier said than done. Let's just feed this up here. Oop, oop, oop. I think I broke my thread. So maybe the Clover Easy Loop is not quite as easy as we hoped. So since I'm not exactly pleased with that, we'll leave it at that because that was not successful. So let's move on to another method. Go away, Clover Easy Loop. We will use you as an elastic bodkin instead. Another little device that's handy for turning loops is the loop turner, and this one's by Tooltron, and it says it's for turning bias tubing, but it works fine for regular tubing too. Cut on the straight of grain, and it has a little latch tool on the end, and this unit says it has a lifetime guarantee. from defects in material or workmanship. So you would know pretty soon if there was a problem with it, I guess. Anyway, you bring the latch through to the opposite side. You catch the fabric. The little hook goes into the fabric and the latch supposedly closes inside there. And then you do your best. Oops, it undid. So that's one of the issues with this, is sometimes it comes unhooked and then you've got to slip in there and just hook it again. There we are. This fabric is kind of nasty thick, size 2 we're using. Okay, there we go. So that is the little Tooltron loop turner. So let me know what your favorite method is. I think, having done all these today, I found it the easiest to use the simple safety pin method, or the easy turn tubes were pretty good. The ribbon wasn't bad, but to tell you the truth, on my first try, I stitched the ribbon into the seam, so you know that could certainly happen to you as well. The V method that we did with the little V at the end, that was okay, but I think only for very lightweight fabrics. So I'll leave it with you, and happy tube turning.